Breakdown. I'm Jason Gilbo, J Gilbo 11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J Clay. Taking a look at tonight's monster 15-game MLB slate and breaking it down position by position, looking at our favorite hitters, targets, and if you're looking for pitcher knowledge, we'll be doing the pitcher pod a little bit later, so you'll find all the info on the arms there. Jumping right into things, you got 7:05 here, Rays and Yankees. Matt Moore taking on CC Sabathia in Yankee Stadium. You have an over-under of 8. The Yankees are small favorites. This is the one we were kind of talking about before the show that, there's definitely some nice one-offs in this game, more so from the Rays side. Really looking at Evan Longoria and Logan Forsythe as, two bats to really look to take against CC Sabathia because he's really struggled with right-handed bats over the last 2 years or so with the 366 WOBA allowed and a 1.61 home run per 9.
Yeah, and the Yankees' bats have just been struggling so much lately. I'm not sure I trust anyone necessarily. So maybe stick to tournaments with this game is kind of how I'm looking at it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on a 15-game slate, you expect the Rays to kind of get lost in the mix. And as far as the Yankees side, against left-handers, not a ton of guys I like. A-Rod just seems to be pointless at this point. You might get lucky there in a GPP, but I'm not expecting him to do much. Aaron Hicks is a guy on FanDuel maybe worth a punt play, but I don't think you're going to need any punt plays tonight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is a big boy, so
yeah,
no need to stretch it.
Next one here, you got Twins Nationals, over under 7.5, Kyle Gibson, Gio Gonzalez. Looking for most of these runs to really kind of come from the Washington side of things. That Twins offense hasn't been good, although they do have some guys who can hit lefties pretty well. Brian Dozier, Miguel Sano. Those would be guys to take in GPPs, obviously. Not looking at any of them in cash. Obviously, Bryce Harper in play. I mean, the guy's absolutely been crushing baseballs here to start the season. And he's a guy who's, the price is crazy high, 5,900 on FanDuel, 54 there on DK. Yeah, so on a core slate, it's kind of like Harper might be the GPP move, but still, I just don't think paying him for that price tag is the way I'm going tonight.
And obviously, you guys are going to get into the pitchers, but in terms of paying down, I think there are a few options. And if you can fit him in, 6 homers in the last 8 games is pretty incredible. Obviously, that's not going to keep up forever, but who's to say he couldn't get 2 or 3 hits today,
Yeah, definitely. Kyle Gibson, kind of your average right-hander. You can also look at Daniel Murphy. Overall, this is kind of an unappealing. If this was a smaller slate, maybe I'd focus in on the Washington offense a little bit more. But because it's 15 games, there's plenty of other areas to target on this slate.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
So, yeah, not looking for too much offense there. Those Daniel Murphy, Bryce Harper, they're kind of the 2 big names to mention. This one, 7:07, you got Athletics and Blue Jays, over-under of 8. 2 pitchers that have been playing pretty well this season. You got Sonny Gray taking on Aaron Sanchez, over-under of 8, which is a little bit lower than what we usually see at the Rogers Center at times. This one I'm treating with kind of GPP potential tonight. You're looking at the Jays offense. Haven't been quite the powerhouse it was last year, but obviously we expect that to pick up. But both these arms have been pretty quality so far this year.
Right, and spoiler alert, people are going to be on that Coors game and on the Cubs again tonight, I think, a little bit. So there's going to be a lot of ways to sort of differentiate yourself. I think Toronto's a little intriguing. In terms of their lineup, I think not many people are going to be on them tonight just because they're facing a pretty solid starter. So I'm kind of looking at them as sort of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. You look at DraftKings pricing, Encarnacion 4,500, cheaper than Adrian Gonzalez, Rizzo, Goldschmidt, who's facing the lefty. Donaldson's price has come down a little bit. Obviously, Tulo is pretty cheap. Bautista as well. So 4,400 for Jose Bautista. I know Sonny Gray is, a decent right-hander. Obviously, no severe splits to righties or lefties. But overall, Rogers Center plays well to these Toronto bats. And if DraftKings is going to drop their prices down, I think, that's what really puts them at an intriguing spot.
Definitely.
The A side of things, obviously, Aaron Sanchez was a guy who struggled against lefties last year. Leading up into this point, still allowing a 361 WOBA to lefties, 1.77 home runs per 9, but has looked great to start the year so far. Obviously, this A's offense does have some left-handed bats. I'm not looking for them to do much, but I think you can take a look at maybe some lefties in GPPs like Stephen Vogt, Josh Reddick as well, Billy Burns. But I think Aaron Sanchez might be in for another quality start tonight.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys that we were talking about that maybe you could pay down for to get some of those Coors bats in there.
Yeah, definitely. You look obviously. Toronto are 131 favorites. I think that's a pretty good call there. So if I'm leaning Sanchez, I won't be picking on too many A's guys, but there is a lefty split there if he can kind of revert back to his 2015 ways.
Definitely.
Indians Tigers got Josh Tomlin, Justin Verlander, 8.5 total here. Detroit small favorites. This one's an interesting game to target just because these are two quality offenses who can get it going at times. I think this might be the game that's kind of the ultimate swerve tonight because there are some bats in there that bring plenty of pop to the table and two arms that really can be up and down at times. So as far as this Indian side of things go, I think the lefties are in an intriguing spot. Looking at guys like Kipnis and Lindor, Rajai Davis has been swinging the bat well. So I really don't mind this Indians team tonight, and I think you can maybe sprinkle them into cash games as well. But I think for the most part, it's still going to be pretty tournament heavy.
Yeah, and of course we're talking about Lester. He's coming off a game. Wait, talking about
Indians Tigers.
oh, I thought we were okay. You're throwing me off here, my man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Indians bats. Indians bats, Russell Indians, and against Verlander. I mean, obviously Verlander's been fairly solid. Right-handers have tagged him, at a decent rate here. 1.01 home runs per nine since last year, 313 WOBA. So I mean, they're certainly in play. You're looking at Davis, Napoli from that right side GPPs. He's been a bit tougher on left-handers, but I still don't mind those Indians bats in tournaments tonight.
Okay, so more importantly, Chicago. I'm gonna sit this one out. I'm putting myself in timeout. You can talk about the other side there, and then I'll wait till we.
You just have Cubs Reds lined up ready to go.
That's where my cue cards were, and I am not prepared for this moment.
So on the Tigers side, Josh Tomlin pitched pretty well last year. Has looked decent so far to start the year this year. But really, those Tigers bats still in GPPs worth a look. Obviously, we've seen Miguel Cabrera start pretty slow this year, just hitting 232. But his price tag is coming down. Hitting in Comerica, kind of your average hitter's park. Obviously, cooler weather kind of takes things down a notch. But overall, I think mainly this is going to be a GPP game for me. I don't mind those Tigers bats against Tomlin. He can be home run prone at times, so really going to be looking their way as far as those big bats. Just because we saw a 2.51 home runs per nine over 32 innings so far going back to last year against right-handers. Not a big sample size, but that ground ball rate's pretty poor. So Cubs Reds.
Woo!
Take it away, my friend. Take it away.
Woo! All right. So obviously John Lester starting today, one of the higher priced pitchers on the slate. But he's coming off a game where he actually struggled quite a bit against the Reds, and he didn't put up that many fantasy points. So obviously a small sample and not everything, but I think there are other better options, and I'm fading Lester tonight.
Oh yeah, I mean that's something that I agree with. I think there are some cheaper arms, and in Great American, it's not a favorable pitcher's park, and the Reds have given Lester fits this year, and it's obviously because one, he can't hold runners on, and the Reds have known that, so they do. If guys get on, they are running freely, which causes a concern. So yeah, I definitely am in agreement there. I'm not necessarily taking the Reds players. I'll definitely be looking at the Cubs side of things. Obviously, John Moscott, not a guy that you should shy away from. And really, I mean, much like yesterday, the Cubs bats are all in play yet again.
Right. I think there's some sort of big scoring in this game is sort of where I was going with that point. But yeah, definitely. I think there's some interesting GPP sort of value in both sides of the teams here.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Coors is going to be a popular play, but then I think you're also going to head to this game, especially just coming off of the football score that the Cubs put up last night.
Right, 16, yeah.
But yeah, you can really, I mean, the prices are high, but obviously Chris Bryant coming off of 6 RBI, 2 homer nights in play, Rizzo in play. But you look at some of those guys. I mean, Nolan Arenado in Colorado, cheaper than Bryant. Rizzo is more expensive than Adrian Gonzalez on DraftKings there. So it kind of gives you something to think about. Coors is probably going to be popular. Maybe Cubs is more of a swerve off of those games. So I think pricing's a little bit different, so it kind of makes you think a little bit between those two games.
Yeah, Dexter Fowler and Jason Hayward are intriguing for me as well.
Yeah, Fowler's absolutely been crushing this season. I like him a lot, hitting 393 to start the year, driving in runs, and getting it done in that leadoff spot. So, yeah, he's a favorable play for me. A little pricey on DK, but I still think he's worth it. FanDuel, he's not too badly priced, still at 3,800.
Right.
So, next one here. Are you prepared for Mets Braves?
Yeah, I wish I had note cards in front of me.
So you just flip through them?
Okay. All right. We're ready.
This one does have some rain potential in this one. Thunderstorms predicted, so that might be something to keep an eye on. But it's Matt Harvey versus Bud Norris. 7.5 over under. Mets strong favorites of -188. Obviously, looking at this Mets offense, it's not the best ballpark. You're looking at Turner Field being slightly leaning towards pitchers. There hasn't been a ton of runs scored there this year. I don't expect there to be a ton for most of the season, but this Mets offense does have some pop. Obviously, Bud Norris allowing a 369 WOBA to right-handers over the last year, 1.29 home runs per 9. So really looking at him, he's been decent against lefties, has been terrible against lefties, 388 WOBA, 1.92 home runs per 9. And looking at this Mets team, they're kind of an interesting stack to kind of, go against the Cubs and Coors game tonight.
Right, and I think in a smaller slate without sort of these other bigger names, this would be probably a higher owned stack, correct? But I mean, with everything considered, I think you could get pretty reasonable odds on this team tonight. Yeah,
definitely. I think you are going to get him at a lower ownership because, for one, the Vegas line doesn't jump out at you. It's just a 7.5 over under. There is some rain here, which is a cause for concern. But really, 1 through 6 there, you can look at those Mets guys. Granderson leading off, David Wright, Yoenis Cespedes, Michael Conforto. Lucas Duda is a guy who's been hitting well lately. A great GPP play for tonight's slate. So you can make definitely some interesting swerves, and I think maybe sprinkling Mets into some stacks would be a nice way to go tonight.
Definitely. And quickly, man, the poor Braves, not the Braves of Andruw Jones and Chipper Jones and Javi Lopez that I remember from my childhood. Those days are gone.
They are. It's Freddie Freeman, and that's it. So Matt Harvey's been pretty poor this season, but I'm expecting him to bounce back tonight against the Braves.
Yeah, that's a nice matchup for him.
As long as weather kind of cooperates.
So. Definitely.
Next game here, we have the Rangers and White Sox in U.S. Cellular. Over-under of 8, -161, White Sox favorites. Two lefties on the hill kind of put some guys in some spots. Quintana, not a guy I want to pick on too much with Rangers bats, but on the other side of things, there are some White Sox guys that intrigue me in tournaments. You're looking at Perez, not a strong left-hander. He's allowed a 343 WOBA to right-handed bats over the last season and a half here. He does keep the ball in the park, which is something that is noteworthy. But you can look at Jose Abreu. You can look at Todd Frazier as possible GPP pivots. This is all just in comparison to Coors being the chalk cash game plays tonight.
Right. Yeah, we're pretty much playing off that game,
Yeah, definitely. In GPPs, you just maybe want to swerve a little bit. I think cash games, you're still going to be leaning that way, and with the Cubs as well. So I think this is another game where you can get some one-offs to possibly kind of separate yourself from the field tonight.
Definitely.
So those are the only two bets that I really see. Adrian Beltre is another one that I like. Obviously, he's hammered left-handed pitching. He would be an interesting swerve. But, facing Quintana has been pretty solid this year. And usually is in for – it does kind of limits his damage. I'm not expecting a ton of runs out of this Rangers team tonight.
Right. I like Quintana tonight, so I'm pretty much fading the Texas bats pretty much altogether.
Yeah, definitely. A10, you got Phillies and Brewers. 8.5 over under here, Miller Park. So puts things into perspective that it could be some runs scored here. I'm a big fan of Aaron Nola tonight. I think he's a pretty solid GPP option. One of those pitchers that can help you afford some Coors bats.
Hmm.
Davies, on the other hand, I don't mind some of the Phillies guys against him. Um,
Ryan
but outside of
Braun's
that,
been. We going with Ryan Braun again tonight? He's been streaking lately.
yeah, I think he's a great GPP play. I think his price is remotely close to some of the other names, but I think, yeah, I mean, he's at home, Miller Park, Nola's struggling his last start. I think he's still a decent arm, but Braun, I mean, still a quality bat to get in that lineup.
Hmm.
But the Philly side of things, it's going to be one where they might possess some big time value tonight. I just think going up against Davies, it's one of those ones where I got to see what the lineup looks like when it comes out to see what's going on. But Maikel Franco's a name that jumps out to me tonight. Just 3,900 on DraftKings, so he's pretty cheap and he does have some pop. Obviously, great park factors for him. 2,700 on FanDuel, so he could be a cheap swerve at third base if you're not quite paying up for the big names.
Definitely.
So, anyone else you're looking at from that Philly side or Brewer side, or just
Not really. The sort of way my research went today kind of didn't even really take me to this game. So I'm kind of fading this game as well.
yeah? Next one here, you got Red Sox and Astros. Stephen Wright, Colin McHugh, 8.5 over under. Favorable park here in Minute Maid. McHugh, interesting here because kind of has reverse splits here. 327 WOBA over the last 113 innings against right-handed pitching. Um, the Red Sox, I think there are going to be plenty of runs scored in this game. Obviously, the knuckleballer and Stephen Wright kind of puts Houston in a GPP range because Wright's pitched pretty well this year. And you're just not going to know what you're going to get from a knuckleballer. It could be completely off, and you could see Houston completely just launch off and tee off on him, or you could see him be on his game and Houston in that high strikeout rate really struggle.
Right.
So I think really Red Sox bats. I think some right-handers intrigue me, like Mookie Betts tonight as another swerve. You can obviously look at David Ortiz, who just seems to be ageless as he keeps crushing the ball. Are you taking any shots with any Houston guys tonight?
Obviously Altuve always an option, and I mean George Springer's pretty intriguing to me tonight as well.
Yeah, I mean the Altuve thing. I mean, with the knuckleballer on the hill he gets on, Altuve is going to have the green light to run as he usually does.
Hmm.
7 stolen bases in 16 games so far this season, and Altuve, a guy who's already had some pop so far, hitting 407 at home. So yeah, I like Altuve. As you mentioned, Springer's a nice name. Correa always in play, who's up there priced with some of the top shortstop options. So this is a game that's going to be pretty favorable, and I think if there was a core slate, this game would be one that I really heavily target.
Right, that's a pretty intriguing stack you said in that three man with Correa, Springer, and Altuve.
Yeah, definitely. And another guy that you can kind of maybe run off of it is Colby Rasmus or Tyler White.
Hmm.
Rasmus obviously coming off a big game, but both are intriguing plays at decent price tags as well. 8:15, Orioles and Royals, Giovanni Gallardo, Chris Young, 8.5 over under. The only thing going against these bats is the park factors. Kauffman Stadium kind of limits home runs, but these are two teams that have quality offenses. Obviously, um, kind of looking at the main guys in this one, Royals a little bit more valuable. I don't mind Eric Hosmer tonight. I think this is one of the games that it's an 8.5 over under, but it's one I'm not expecting a ton of offense in.
Right. Yeah, and I mean Machado just keeps 14 game hit streak now and two hits last night. So obviously you kind of expect that to continue. And if you're looking for a high end third baseman, but I mean I just think there's better options. You know.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, both those guys, Young and Gallardo, have struggled against left-handers. Gallardo 333 WOBA allowed. Keeps the ball in the park for the most part. Chris Young, on the other hand, 1.49 home runs per nine, 341 WOBA allowed. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher. A guy like Chris Davis will make his way into some of my lineups tonight, more so on FanDuel, where he's a bit cheaper at 4,200. He's not quite as costly to
Hmm.
put into your lineups. As you mentioned, Machado just absolutely crushing. He would become a solid play for me yet again tonight. And I think he's going to be little bit low round because you got Bryant coming off a big game, as well as Arenado being up there.
Definitely.
Oh boy, 840, Dodgers, Rockies, Scott Kazmir, Jonathan Gray.
Yeah.
Over under of 11. Gray's a quality arm when he gets outside the cores. Obviously, Kazmir has struggled so far to start the year, but over under 11. I'm expecting a ton of offense. DraftKings did not quite pay up the prices that I was expecting them to.
Hmm.
Adrian Gonzalez, 4,600. Justin Turner, hit and clean up. At that price tag of, no, where does he go? At just 3,800, give me a break. Turner's one of my favorite plays tonight. Absolutely, I had to scroll down. I couldn't believe how far down he was on the
Yeah.
salary list. But Justin Turner, big time hammer against right-handed pitching. I'm looking for him to do some damage, and Yasiel Puig as well. I mean, really,
Yeah.
look at that Dodgers lineup, and just really 1 through 7 is where you're going to be heading tonight.
For catcher tonight, our optimizer loves Grandal, only 3,700 on DraftKings, so that's an interesting guy to throw in there, especially if you're stacking. But is this leaning like too much chalk? Are we leaning at too high of an ownership percentages for tournaments here? Obviously, you want some exposure, but if you're setting multiple lineups, is this too much?
I don't on FanDuel. Yes, I think you can make some swerves away just because they have like you look at Grandal 3,700 on FanDuel. Obviously, it's going to be pretty low owned there because I can't see myself paying 3,700 for him in cores, even though it's a great spot for him when there's cheaper guys that are worth the look as well. But when you're getting guys like Turner on um, DraftKings at that price and FanDuel and Grendel as well, and still in some of the other names. Yasiel Puig just 4,300. So they haven't quite priced these names up. So I think they're going to be really chalky tonight, and I think maybe you work them into your other stacks if you're going to be contrarian. I still don't think it's completely wise to just completely fade this game.
Right, right. Definitely want some shares, but I think you have to be aware it's going to be really tough to win a GPP with sort of the basic Dodger stack.
Yeah, I think so. Just because it's going to be so popular, that's where you might have to make some even more contrarian moves, whether it's on at pitcher or you're looking at just taking some odd names out there, maybe combining them with a Met stack or something like that. But
Hmm.
the pricing on DraftKings just drives me nuts that these guys are not priced higher.
Yeah.
Especially, I'm just looking at Puig and Turner, 4,300 and 3,800. It's just insane that I had to scroll down. I'm like, where the hell did he go? So. Um,
What do you think about sort of Story and Arenado tonight?
Arneo's a guy I like. Once again, he's a guy who's 4,600 on DraftKings. It just depends where you want to go, Turner or him. But Kazmir hasn't looked strong this season. Obviously, Arenado's got the Coors bump at home. He's hitting pretty well there. Has 3 of his 6 home runs there, hitting 375. But overall, I think the Rockies might be more so the GPP team if you're looking just strictly inside this game tonight,
Right,
just
definitely.
because their prices are higher than. I mean, you look at Story 5,100, and then you got Seager who's 1,000 less in the same spot.
Hmm.
So it's an interesting move. I'm kind of baffled by it, but overall, this is a game where you're going to want to pretty much have your core in.
Right.
So, as usual, I mean, we'll be talking about this game for the next 3 days and I'll just curious to see how the pricing goes over Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, that will be very interesting because this seem not obviously they don't make errors, but this looks a little peculiar to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the pitchers. I still think Casimir and Gray are, yes, they're decent, but it's cores. The Vegas total's high. These two offenses can't put the ball, in play. So I'm a little hesitant on why that happened. But moving on, and John Neese, Patrick Corbin, Pirates and Diamondbacks over under a 9. This game I like as well as far as some GPP swerves, and you got two lefties on the hill, but you also have two teams with some guys who can mash southpaws. And starting with the Pirates side, obviously McCutcheon, um,
Marte, Starling
Marte.
Marte, yeah.
Yeah, he's a guy who I like a lot. And Corbin, been a little bit shaky so far to start the year. Um, Nice, on the other hand, obviously it's kind of limited. You have Wellington Castillo, Paul Goldschmidt, but yeah, you named it. I mean, I like Marte a lot tonight. I like Cutchin as well. Josh Harrison's a guy who's worth a look. I hope he kind of slides up into the lineup But overall, I think this is another game where it's a decent swerve off of cores and maybe getting some bats in there that kind of make you a little bit different.
Yeah, I've been playing around with sort of these lineups already, and it's pretty intriguing to throw that McCutcheon Marte mini stack in there for outfielders, and then sort of go either Cubs or Dodgers in the rest of your lineup. It definitely, there's a lot of ways to make that work tonight, so that's something to think about.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. Yeah, Marte McCutcheon, I like that duo, hammer lefties. And if you want a cheap catcher, Francisco Cervelli is a guy to keep an eye on. Not a big power bat, but I think he's a safe cash game option. More so on FanDuel, just because obviously Grandal is going to be the popular play. And then also Castillo, who has hit lefties well. Goldschmidt, expensive, but has hit lefties. I mean, Wells kind of underrated. I mean, he absolutely crushes lefties. So at home, John Neese kind of getting outside of PNC Park. I don't like him as much. I think Goldschmidt's an interesting tournament play tonight.
Definitely, yeah, and I mean he got a huge price bump from his last game, so obviously there's something there, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And, kind of been a little bit up and down. So I don't think he's your most consistent cash game option, especially for the price tag. So definitely lean more towards him in tournaments.
Right.
Now we get to the later games, the 10:05, where it's not quite as appealing as far as offense goes. Felix Hernandez, Nick Tropiano, these games are just kind of off the map for me as far as offense goes, just because. I mean, you're looking at all 7.5 over/unders, 7 there in that last game. I'm not targeting against Felix Hernandez, Nick Tropiano. I'm not really targeting against either.
Yeah, this game just kind of stinks. I don't know what to think of Felix Hernandez tonight, but he kind of just cancels out Mike Trout for me. That's kind of what he's serving in the slate for me. I just view him as, all right, well, I'm not playing Mike Trout, and I'm kind of just avoiding this game.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Trout's the only honorable mention in this Angels lineup right now, and he's had a couple of decent games against Hernandez in the past, but overall, I mean, this is a game to fade in, safe go. I'm not looking for offense here.
Mm-hmm.
Next one, you got Marlins and Giants. This is another one where maybe you could get some a little bit more runs scored. I think out of the 3 games tonight, this might be the one with the most. Jared Kozart and Jeff Samardzija, 7.5 over/under. You got AT&T Park backing you. That's one thing that's not too enthusing for hitters, but you do have Jeff Samardzija. It's a lot of 356 WOBA to lefties. You have Kozart, kind of your average arm there. So I guess it's kind of intriguing. I think more so maybe if you're playing a late slate of the 10 o'clock or later games, you look at some bats in this one.
Yeah, this would be going super contrarian if you were looking to sort of stack this game or anything. But I do think D. Gordon is pretty intriguing, sort of for his price and everything. He popped up in our optimizer as well, so someone to look at in that game if you're digging deep, I guess.
Yeah, I think our optimizer picked up on the price drop from Gordon, now just 4,200 on DraftKings. So yeah, I mean that is a call, and with Samardzija's kind of struggling against lefties, Gordon's obviously going to get a bump there.
Definitely.
Next game, you got Cardinals and Padres. Cardinals are interesting just because it's Andrew Cashner, and Cashner has really struggled with left-handed bats. A lot of 374 WOBA to lefties last year and so far this season. 1.42 home runs per 9. Petco, not a bad park for left-handed power, as we've seen. Obviously, James Shields, Ian Kennedy, and Cashner kind of helped that bump up last year. Interesting guys like Matt Carpenter would be a decent swerve, and I think out of the 6 teams there, out of the 6 teams there in that night slate, if you're playing the 10 o'clock or later, Cardinals are the most favorable offense for me.
Yeah. This game's really intriguing for me because Adam Wainwright is also pitching, and he's been really hurting so far this season. So maybe there's some sneaky offense in this game for sort of both sides.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, Wainwright's really struggled. Hasn't looked quite himself. The swinging strike rate's way down so far this year. Obviously, the Padres offense isn't the one that we target too often.
Right.
I think you're looking more so on the Cardinals side. Obviously, with Carpenter, you can look at Moss, Adams, depending on what the lineups are. Some lefty bats that are in play, I think, tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be one where you do get a Coors stack, you do get a Cubs stack, but maybe you play one or two Cardinals as well in that lineup, and that's your difference maker.
Right, and that would definitely be a way to get sort of a low-owned GPP type of lineup in.
Yeah, just because it's off the grid from some of those other Mets, Red Sox, Astros games that we were talking about earlier. So that's going to wrap it up here with the slate breakdown. Check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all our great tools and content.